Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Cobra. So this movie has got to be the most cardboardy action movie that I've probably ever seen in my life. But man, did I really enjoy it. It was so good. Even for its flaws and at certain points, it's kind of just being a short film. I really feel like this film really should have been what Judge Dredd tried to do, but eventually Judge Dredd is to go on and have like way too much like money thrown into it and really cared so much about the whole like science fiction angle of the movie that we start to eventually kind of lose the story, and it just kind of ends up being like these two characters on the run, and it really pulls away from what the Judge Dredd character should have actually been, which is to be a guy in a helmet the whole entire time. And it kind of just becomes this kind of very generic action film that eventually has to have some kind of story between the hero and villain character by the end of it. But so back to this film. This movie is to be just so like funny to me. Like, we have Stallone, who you can really understand why he went on to possibly do comedy, just because he is a funny actor. And we are also to realize that both Stallone and Bridget Nielsen here had a relationship kind of off of the cameras, and that, of course, is to be probably the main reason why they are to have not only gone on and done Cobra together, but then also to have done Rocky, just because they had a relationship together. But so, as Nielsen had even gone on to, in her reality show, kind of mention that she had been with Stallone, and kind of mentioning that at points in time, when she is to have seen him in a cardboard cutout. But regardless, let's kind of get past that. So we have Cobra coming in, and he is this silent but deadly character who is to, of course, remind me of like the Ryan Gosling Drive film, or the Mel Gibson Mad Max character. And to really have this character be like the buck stops here kind of guy, or the law stops here kind of character. And he is to be on this zombie squad, and he is to go on and be the guy who does these jobs that no one wants. That's kind of how they set him up, and kind of try as much as possible to give him some kind of backstory, even though he's supposed to be so mysterious, with Marion Cobretti being his actual name instead of just Cobra. And so, really, the flaws of this film really are to be like pretty bad. But we have to just enjoy this movie anyways. There obviously is a scene in this film where there's to be this ripped shirt where you can see this microphone taped to a guy. You can also see the fact that our entire like Bridget Nielsen damsel in distress character is to be wearing a wig this entire film. And also, we are to really have a sponsor, Pepsi, but no one in this entire film goes on and drinks a single one of them in this film, even when there is a clear opportunity for a character to go on and do so. But instead, Stallone goes on and chugs a Coors. What a mistake that was. But yeah, so really, there's also just kind of some interesting choices kind of going on in this movie, like the whole like cutting the pizza with the scissors. Don't know what that was about. But so anyways, yeah, like we have this Night Stalker anarchy group that is to really show us how menacing they are by the consistent vignette of the clinging of the axes. But then if you go on and you kind of look in the background of every one of those shots, we start to see how oddly some of the axes are. Like some are big and short axes, and some are kind of like these oddballish like weapons of sorts. But again, like that probably is to rationalize like how much money this movie had, but then also to just be like, well, hey man, like spending a lot of money on all these kind of axes and whatever just for this one scene really would have been a mistake. But then also, like, we have this whole like double axe clinging thing going on here, but we don't really see much of that in the third act. Where we're having kind of characters kind of like it should have been one of those where like you're seeing a lot more gunplay, but there really should have been like a lot more like axe chucking or something to justify why these characters are having these axes and clinging them together. Besides the logo or tattoo of our anarchy group, which is to be the voice of the new world or the choice of the new generation. Very much Pepsi-ish. If you were to have gone on and seen the Wayne's World movie where Mike Myers is going through all these like obvious like sponsor spots where he's kind of taking out this pizza and like, yeah, uh, that's of course where we get the choice of the new generation. That's the only way bizarrely that I remember that whole line from the whole Pepsi thing is from a Mike Myers film. But so we have this anarchy group that eventually is to be called the Night Slasher because they don't know that this whole group is actually a group. They just say like, well, like obviously there's just somebody going around and just slicing through all these people with multiple different weapons for some bizarrish reason, and we can't quite figure out why this is going on. And so we have this Night Stalker thing or Night Slasher thing. I knew I was going to say Night Stalker because I've seen too many Blade Trinity films or seen Blade Trinity way too many times. But so Cobra goes on and has the Night Slasher being put on his radar, and he's like, well, hey, like, I want to be a part of this. But then again, we're having like the captain and the detective going on and saying to like, well, hey, like, we're kind of stretched very thin with our departments, and we can't go on and have like a hero being like presented in every single department, or we can't go on and extend this zombie task force, and so on and so forth. So at some point, Cobra goes on to find his damsel in distress, the Bridget Nielsen character, who is to be the only one to have survived through this slasher group. And so that forces both Cobra and the Bridget Nielsen character to then be grouped together to then go on this run of trying to protect her while also realizing that uh, this whole night slasher thing is to be a organization kind of much more better set up than they are to go on and realize, to have an inside man in this whole thing, and to eventually have this numbers game being presented against Cobra, which luckily he has this big massive weapon by the end of this film to blow everyone away. That is to of course be seen here. So again, like I would go on and just say that this movie is great. I feel like it at some point needs to actually just get remade because it's fun. And really, I would definitely give this movie a thumbs up. I'm sure that this movie is probably conveniently being able to stream somewhere, but I am going to, as usual, recommend the app Zeliphonic, Zelivonic, so you can see Cobra for absolutely free. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just kind of go on the real spoiler parts of this movie and kind of much more break it down. And so, with that said, I think it's about that time to just kind of pause this review and then get out my cast list and, of course, go on into fully breaking down this film. So, with that said, uh, I enjoy this movie. I did. Like, it's so nice to be able to watch movies and not need to fully tear them down. It's so good. But with that said, let me pause here and let's get into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. All right, spoilers. So, one thing I also got to say, if I haven't said it already, Stallone, really good with the comedy in this film. Whether it was meant to be that way or not, like, Stallone, like, you could really tell how eventually when he tried to transition into comedy and it didn't work, like, how, like, in this movie, like, why he really went into that, because really, like, he's really good at it. And plus also there's actors like Michael Rosenbaum who would go on to, like, say when he is to have ever kind of been with Stallone that like they rib one another, and like Michael was kind of hesitant about ribbing Stallone, but eventually like Stallone really did like it, and so like they kind of made friends with one another over that. But so let's go in and let's kind of break down this film. So in the very beginning of this movie, we have Stallone in this kind of very montage because we have to kind of set up the hero side and then the villain side as far as these kind of vignettes are concerned. And Stallone is kind of firing off his gun, or kind of wielding his gun, telling us that there is to be a number of murderers and burglaries and assaults and this and that. He's rattling off all of these numbers, and I'm like, well, are you going to tell me how many people are to be birthed every day and how many people are going to die every day and how many people are to get hit by a bus? How many other statistics are we going to break down here? But so after we go on and we get that, we then get the anarchy group that are all within this empty pool, just kind of clinging it off, just kind of getting their clings in with all of these axes. And to really show us again, like, how massive of a group that this can possibly be to justify the third act. But so we go on to have this coated man making his way into this grocery store, and he is to kind of have this disheveled look and just be like, like, I'm gonna go into aisle 8 and get my grapefruit and get out of here. But we come to find out that he has a much more of an agenda within the play out of this story. We also have this associate of this grocery store that is asking this guy consistently, excuse me, sir, do you need any help finding anything? Because, of course, for anybody who's ever gone and worked at a retail store, they have that whole 10-foot rule thing where we would go on and have an associate that works at a store that is need to go on and ask a person, regardless if they don't want to do it or not, like, hey, sir, do you need any help finding anything? But then also, I would have gone on and gone to a number of other stores and eventually realized that nobody does that but me. It's like, wow, like, you're doing that? I'm like, yeah. Like, that was how I was taught when I got into retail. And they're like, oh, well, nobody does that anymore. I'm like, yeah, starting to notice that. But so, regardless of my life story, we have this disheveled man making his way through the aisles, getting his Depends or whatever that he needs to get, the aftershave. And we have this character who is to finally unleash his coat upon this world to find out that he has a shotgun and is to be blasting away at a number of customers, to then go on and have this character who is to possibly release this one customer out into the wild to really just gun him down, sadly enough. So we have the cops who are surrounding this entire grocery location, not even realizing that the killer is to be placed in the very far back in the meat section of this grocery store, not being able to see a lick of anybody coming in or out of it. And all of these customers could have easily escaped this area consistently. But so we have Detective Mont. I want to either say it's Monte or Mont. I'm going to go with Mont here. I'm probably going to ill pronounce it. And this Captain Sears, who are going on and kind of dissecting and just kind of thinking, kind of weighing the odds of kind of bringing in anybody. And so we have them come to the conclusion, it's like, hey, you gotta call the Cobra. You gotta call the zombie. You gotta call him in. You know the guy. So we have Stallone coming in. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna murder somebody this day. Yeah. We also have the music that is to be presented in this film, where we have the one song who's like, working too hard, trying to make a living, and that plays twice in this film. And I don't think I'm ever gonna not get that song out of my head after seeing this film. But yeah, really, it also just kind of tells us of the time of like what they were thinking music was during that time period of just like having it not really make sense with the situation, but it's just kind of background music that is probably to be like very cheap for that time. Who knows? But so, not saying that music is to be placed in here, but it should have actually been like really thick music while Stallone is just kind of walking up to this whole situation, setting him up very well. So Cobra goes on to meet up with Detective Mont, and Mont is to go on and tell him, it's like, well, hey, I didn't want you here, but like it was my decision. And just that kind of line delivery was like, man, like you couldn't have given that another take. You couldn't have gone on and gotten another just attempt at that. But then Cobra's just like, oh, okay, well, F off. I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna get into this grocery store and do the job that none of you could, which is to be so easy for Cobra. So Cobra goes in, front door, dings the bell. Hey, I'm here. Because it's so easy for him to just kind of go in here because the killer is in the very back, kind of clutching onto this family, and is to have this bomb in his hand that is to probably not be a bomb at all. It's probably to just be this like taped up looking metal thing. So Cobra makes his way through this grocery store to just be like, oh yeah, I need some aftershave. Oh, Ben Gay. And is to go on and be by this cooler of beverages, and is just like, oh hey, Coors, all right, hey, and he chucks it, and so the killer kind of blasts with his shotgun this kind of Pepsi setup, and is to be demanding a news crew, and is to be mentioning that he is the voice of the new generation, the voice of the new world. He's the new world order. He's Hulk Hogan, and he wants to go on and lay out everybody. Man, that would have been sweet if it was Hulk Hogan. This would have made a lot of sense for this film if it was Hulk Hogan, the whole new world order thing. But anyways, and then had Kevin Nash and Scott Hall in the background. But regardless, so we have Cobra, who is to make his way to this intercom like thing like we've seen in so many other action movies that we've ever seen in our lives, like the Wolverine Origins movie, where Hugh Jackman is to go on the intercom and like, "You wanted the animal, you got it," and we would have even the Dread movie who was to go on and make this a kind of phone callish like thing and tell everybody that he's coming, and eventually at some point they shoot up this whole phone booth thing to find out that he's not even there. But so Cobra goes on to be on this intercom. He's like, "Hey, dirtbag, you wasted a kid. You're a lousy shot. And I'm going to waste you." And then makes his way, which I don't even think legitimately where he is coming from to get into in the back part of this grocery store is to actually be connected. Like, I just think really that they kind of just set this all up to have kind of Stallone go through this freezer into getting to this guy, to really just have it be this somehow connected thing, but it's not really. But so we have Stallone, who is to kind of bust open this door to have this killer who is going on and asking for this news crew, and he's the new world, and he's gonna kill everybody. He's this hunter, and kind of liked all of that, but it just comes off as just very generic killer. To have some rational reason why this character is to think that he should go on and take out all these people, and we have the killer who's like, "Well, hey man, I have a bomb here. I'm gonna blow everyone away." And Cobra's like, "I don't care. I don't shop here." And it's just like, "Well, hey, do you want to have a conversation? I'm a glutton for conversation. Like, let's talk. Let's chat." To really have this guy be like, "No, he's the silent but deadly type." And like, he's gonna go on and like not really say a word, but then take out his knife while this guy is being chatty Cathy and fling him in the chest, to then go on and blast him away with his gun afterwards to make sure that he's dead. And then go on and like take this one customer woman and just be like, "Come on, let's go." Like, he's dead, I'm sure. I put like 80 bullets into him. I'm sure he's dead. So we have the customer who is to have gone on and gotten shot, who is to be ambulanced away far too quickly, I feel. But then Cobra is to go on and make his way out of this situation, to be just have a swarm of these news anchors that are all just like, "Hey, like, do you think that what you're doing is wrong about murdering all these people and being your own judge, jury, and executioner?" And we have Cobra, who is to go on and grab one of these men and is to like put his face upon the eyes of this dead man, and it's like, "Well, hey, like, you go on and you like judge what I'm doing, like, to this man's family," and like kind of just pieces out after that. But we really also have like the Detective Mont character, who is to always be very critical of Cobra, and throughout this movie is to go on and be like, "Well, hey, you like, man, you really went on and just kind of made a slaughterhouse of this whole entire environment. And like, I think if I would have done it, I think I would have done a way better job." But so we have Cobra, who, after his long day of killing, letting people go on and be rid of this world, whoever the evil is to be. And so Cobra is to make his way home, to crash into this car that is obviously taking up two spots. And we have this altercation with this man who Cobra is to, of course, mention that, like, hey man, like, smoking will kill you, and kind of rips off the cigarette and tosses it to the ground, tears this guy's tank top shirt. We also in the grocery store had that one line of like, well, you're the disease and I'm the cure. And I was like, man, that was a good line too. But I quickly was to have had so many other lines kind of being tossed in there that the whole like cure disease thing like was so old fashioned, but so good also. But so we have Cobra making his way to his apartment to uh, take a scissors to his pizza and clean his gun and find out that there is to be this threat, that is to be this night stalker that is going on and killing all of these women. And we of course have Cobra, who's just like, I want a piece of that. I want a part of that, like that case, so I can go on and stop this whole thing from happening. Having, of course, Cobra make his way to Detective Mont and Captain Sears and wants to be involved in this case, but they're going on and just saying like, well, hey, like we're already stretched thin already. Like we can't have every hero be tasked to every department, and also Mont wants nothing to do with Cobra because of his way of handling things and really how he's not completely abiding by the law. And Cobra is to go on and state it's like, well, like with all the rules that we're having to abide by, and these killers aren't needing to, like that's why they're winning. Like we should go on and like play dirty like they are, and really that is to just force Cobra, instead of being involved more in this case, he is to go off and have target practice with his gun because that's all he can do. But so we have these whole Night Stalker characters, and they are to go on and be this group who, even one of them is to be Nancy Stock, who is to be an inside person involved with the police force, which was like, wow, that's actually really clever. Like, I like that part of this movie. We're really having us like have a real reach of like how well this anarchy group is, but then also it's just to kind of set up how like there's no way out for this hero, but he's gonna do his best to try this uh, whole thing anyways because it's life or death. But so we have at the very beginning of this where we have this car that is to, of course, be parked, and we have the night slasher group that ends up crashing into the back of this car, and Nancy Stock ends up getting out to make her way to the very side of this car where the woman is like I was parked here, like how could you have even gotten on and like crashed into me? Are you drunk? And Nancy's like, yes, I am drunk. To all of a sudden have her realize that the night slasher is to have gotten to open a door next to this woman and cut into her. So realizing that like this like organization is like a well planned and well organized oiled machine, I guess, to really have us realize that like every single like action movie always has to end in a like a mining construction site. And like we've seen Terminator 2, and we've seen all these movies, and they all have to end the same way. Like Nightmare on Elm Street, we always have this like boiler room situation of how that movie always ends. And really, we have this movie that is to still fit into that cliche that we have to just have this very dark and creative environment to just fight our villains in. But anyways, let's backpedal a little bit. So we eventually go on to have the Night Slasher group go on to kill another. As we, of course, have Cobra, who is just kind of sit on his hands, not being a real asset to the Force. Not the Star Wars Force, but the police force. Man, if we could have just had Cobra, who's like, these aren't the droids you're looking for, that would have been funny. Funny joke. Anyways, so we have the Night Slasher group, who I immediately want to just say are Night Stalkers. I just do. But so they make their way into finding yet another damsel in distress who they have gone on to kill and murder and drag their way out of this vehicle, to come to find Ingrid, who is to be Bridget Nielsen, who is to be this model who is just trying to make her way to her fashion shoot, who has gone on to spot the Night Slasher just kind of looking at her without this hosiery mask on. And we, of course, have Nancy, who is screaming, like, hey, get the license plate because we're going after that girl next because maybe she's seen something or can identify the Night Stalker, the Night Slasher. So Ingrid goes on to, like, possibly briefly, but it is to have been so late at night that she couldn't have gone on and really seen enough of anything, to just go on and make her way to her photo shoot, where again she's to wear a cluster of many different wigs, pinks and blacks, and be kind of placing herself next to these robots for some unusual reason. One of the robots are to be wearing a fur coat. Really, like, I thought it was kind of just fascinating to have had this kind of weird photo shoot like thing. But then also, it's like, okay, like, what is to really be like advertised here? Is it the robot? Is it the girl in the swimsuits? What's going on here? But again, there shouldn't be all that thought into this film being placed. But so we would have Nancy, who is making her way into the police station to try and go on and track down this license plate to find this girl, to figure out where she is to go on and be. And we would have the Night Slashers making their way to this parking lot that Ingrid is going to be exiting out of with a guy, I believe, named Dan, who is really just hitting on her, going on and saying, it's like, well, hey, like if you really just finally give in to me, woman, like I'm gonna go on and kind of make your career and fill up your portfolio and fill something else up, if you know what I mean. And Ingrid, of course, like the strong woman that she tries to be for most of this film, is just like, no, F off. Go F yourself. Instead of trying to be effing up all on to me, no, sir, not this day. So we have, of course, the floozy Dan character, who ends up getting his comeuppance because we have the Night Slasher, who is to go on and put an axe into this guy's bate, to then have him, of course, turn around as Ingrid is to be running off, trying to grasp onto these men to assist her, to have this Night Slasher character go on and put an axe into them, or to put a van into them, which is a really cool sequence of events. But so Ingrid is desperately clinging on to this one suited man, and then rushes off to this one elevator or this one security guard. Please help me. And we have this security guard or this police officer. I'm not quite sure exactly which. I'm going to go with security guard because it makes the most sense in my brain. But so we have this security guard who's to whip out this gun and fire away upon this van who is making its way towards him, smashes into him, murders him, and Ingrid is to go on and kind of just slip away underneath this one parking lot pass. And one weird line delivery we have from the Night Slasher, he goes on and he's like, "Kill her." But then they go on and kill the security guard. So, like, that line wasn't exactly well thought out for probably editing purposes. But then also, like, I'm just reminded of the Shredder Ninja Turtles movie where he's like, "Find her, silence her." I'm just throwing all these things just kind of into this review. I'm just having fun. Just let me have some fun. But so, we have Ingrid who's just crying. It's raining in this parking garage. And, like, the horrors have happened this day, leading her to make her way to the police station to give a witness to of all this murdering that has happened upon this day. So she used to be within this hospital, getting this medication that is to probably just kind of loosen her up more so than make her go to sleep. And both Cabretti and Gonzalez are making their way to Ingrid to ask her, of course, like, well, hey, did you tick anybody off? Like, do you have anybody that is to want to kill you for any reason? Like, are you like, do you do drugs? Like, are you have any real threats upon your life by anyone of any means? And so Ingrid is to go on and state, like, well, no. Then eventually she does go on and state that it's like, well, like, I think I did go on and witness a murder. I think I did go on and see something. Because Ingrid is to mention that she had gone on to this one location at a certain time that is to have Cobra go on and be like, oh, like, she might have gone on and seen the Night Slasher, and that's the reason why she is to have had her life threatened at this point. And, like, she might have witnessed something. And so Cobra is to go on and tell Ingrid, it's like, well, hey, like, did you see anybody? Like, could you, like, tell me what they look like? And Ingrid is like, well, yeah, like, there's this one haunting guy that I think I can go on and I can kind of give a description of. And so Cobra's like, okay, great. Like, we're going to get, like, a guy who can kind of sketch out a face, and we're going to go on and, like, and have you do that. So Ingrid goes on and is to talk to the sketch guy, and he's to make a kind of face of this guy who ends up being legitimately the Night Stalker. And Cobra is to go on and take this picture and just be like, all right, like, we finally have a face that eventually I'm just going to hold on to. And both the Detective Mont and Captain Sears are going to be very upset that I've kind of held on to this picture instead of giving it to them. And that's going to get Cobra into hot water later on, where we have the captain and the detective kind of confront Cobra and just be like, well, hey, you've been sitting on this for however long? Like, we can send this out to the news and they can cover this to make everybody just kind of aware of this guy. And maybe if we can get any details about this whereabouts of this guy. But also Cobra, like, probably doesn't even know who to trust because he's that kind of guy. Plus, also, he wants this case. The more and more, like, he can keep this tight to the vest, the more that he can go on and have this case be his. But so we have Ingrid, who is to remain at this hospital for kind of just observation purposes. And so Cobra is to talk to the captain and the detectives and then leave the station to make his way home to end up getting a phone call from Gonzalez stating like, well, hey man, like, what did you need from me? And Cobra's like, what are you talking about? I never called you in here. And Gonzalez is like, well, somebody did. And that's when Cobra realizes, like, oh my god, like, make our way to the hospital because somebody's coming after this girl. So we have Nancy, who is to go on and talk the night slasher, and is to say, it's like, well, let me get her, like, let me do this. And the night slasher should be like, no, she's mine, as he's just sharpening up his blade. Yeah, I'm gonna do so much work with this blade. You believe me. I'm gonna be slicing and dicing. Oh, speaking of like the whole blade thing, like in the third act, when we have Stallone and the night slasher fighting, Stallone ends up using these chains. And I'm like, oh my god, like I've seen like Stallone use this whole chain thing in another movie of Expendables 2, where by the end of that movie, we have both Jean Claude and Stallone fighting. And I think Jean Claude has a knife, and Stallone has these like massive chains that he's to be like, come on, like, let's go. And really, I'm just like, okay, so like, evidently Stallone just knows like chain work from this movie to just kind of retie into that movie. Um, but maybe no one had gone on and never noticed that, but like I finally did, which was kind of fun. But I'm just kind of getting all over the place. My bad. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself again. But so the night slasher is to also just kind of blacken his hair in this mirror, and he's to probably put like grease or something into it. I'm sure it's probably not like hair dye, legit. But so, because really, I'm sure he goes on and like washes it off later. Hence why in the third act he's not having black hair. But so maybe he's putting in just for men. Yeah, way before that was even an existing thing. But so we have the night slasher making his way to this hospital, portraying himself as being this janitor who, while he's make his way through this hospital, we end up having one of the nurses notice, like, well, hey, like, it's a little late for anybody to just be kind of mopping around. And we have this one security guard who's like looking at this nurse and like, well, should I say anything to him? And the nurse is like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna personally like realize that this guy is way too huge for me to go up against and get killed later on if that's okay with you. So we also have this one woman who sees this janitor going in the elevator, and she has to consistently use this line of like, well, hey, like, use the stairs next time, like, be wary of the health code. And I'm like, the dude has this mop bucket and this mop with him, and you're asking him to use the stairs? Logically, there are some gaps going on in my brain. But thinking about it, maybe this girl doesn't realize that this guy has this bucket, but then also this girl has this line that she wants to use, and that's all she's got. So, Night Stalker makes his way to go on and have this nurse find this prior dead janitor, and then ends up getting the Night Stalker to grab her and murder, to where he has bloody gloved hands. He's making his way through this hospital with this knife. Just kind of, I can't wait to just slice more people up. Slice and dice. So the Night Stalker, of course, is to try to make his way to Ingrid. And so Ingrid goes on and notices this man because of seeing him prior, and is to run off into the bathroom, lock the door, and we have a whole situation where like the Night Stalker is smashing into this door. I'm like, yeah, like let's just have so much horror vibes in this movie that we have to have this killer who is just like smashing through this door, bring a massive hole, and I'm just waiting for this here's Johnny situation going on here. But that's not what's going on. So we have this guy just bashing through this door. I'm like, this is nice. Ingrid has this bathroom with these two doors. So luckily she has a way of escape. And so here's where we have both Cobra and Gonzalez like kind of frantically making their way to this hospital, and that goes on to leave Ingrid kind of by herself. And so she hits this fire alarm and makes her way out of this hospital, which forces her into the arms of Cobra and Gonzalez to then have them go on and be like, well, like obviously like this guy is coming after this girl, and there has to just be some inside man going on that is kind of giving this guy instructions of where this person is. So we have Cobra and we have Ingrid, who now have to go onto this road trip where it seems that the only real person who is to know like where they're going is really just Cobra, but Gonzalez is kind of falling behind. But Gonzalez is also with Nancy Stock, the one girl who is to be the inside person of the Anarchy group. So I'm like, all right, like written fairly clever here to help us understand how the third act is going to get played out. But like in my thought process, if I were kind of Cobra, I would just be like, well, you know what? I trust Gonzalez with my life, but I'm not quite sure about Nancy. But then also, like, Cobra is to consistently rib Gonzalez about his diet in this film. How, like, Gonzalez is to go on and be like, man, it would have been nice if I could just punch Mont in the face. And Cobra is just like, well, you know what? Like I think that you're really too violent, and I think it all comes down to your diet, like too much sugar. Like maybe you should have some rice or some fish. And Gonzalez is like, yeah, well, whatever. To consistently kind of play out throughout this movie that this character is to have this just kind of horrible diet where he's kind of having Butterfingers and all this candy and all this stuff. And eventually, when he's kind of gurneyed by the end of this film, he has to ask for gummy bears. And Cobra is just like, oh, of course. You're like, just one last thing that you have to go on and just kind of consistently say that this either this guy is just a really bad diet, or he's to just kind of be this kind of cliche-ish cop that is to just kind of like eat Twinkies all the time, and kind of like the cop from Die Hard, just kind of portraying that stereotype, I guess. But anyways, we have Cobra going on this road trip, and we're getting these moments where both Cobra and Ingrid are to kind of have these kind of talking moments where we can kind of possibly break down more of possibly Cobra's backstory, or kind of have kind of similar moments to the original Terminator movie, where Sarah Connor is going at and asking Kyle Reese, is like, well, hey, like in your future, like, do you have a girlfriend? uh, like, like, what's your future like? What's John Connor like? We have Ingrid kind of doing that same exact thing with Cobra, going on and asking. It's like, well, hey, like, do you have any time for like a girl? Like, are you like putting too much time into your job to really care about anything else? But so we have Cobra and Ingrid at one point like stopping at this one restaurant joint, and we have Cobra who kind of looks at this kind of burger thing, and he grabs it and he's like, well, hey, your order's ready. Kind of this one funny moment. But so Cobra ends up sitting down after placing back down this burger, and it's going to realize that Ingrid is like slathering her fries with this ketchup. And he's like, well, hey, you need a life preserver? It's like, what? He's like, yeah, like your fries, they're drowning. And so she goes on and further like slathers her fries with ketchup, and he's like, ugh. But so eventually this all leads to this hotel, and if not to have like Stallone also have the moment where he used to make the joke to Gonzalez that he needs to kind of change up his diet by kind of showing him this frog. Like, you need more meat in your diet. But so Gonzalez ends up talking to Ingrid, and Ingrid is like, well, hey, like, where are we going? And Gonzalez is like, well, I don't know. You got to ask Cobra about that. And you also, like, you got to say what his actual name is, because he's going to get a good kick out of it, and call him Marion Cobretti. And then Ingrid, of course, goes on and is to like say to Cobra, it's like, well, hey, yeah, like, so your real name is Marion Cobretti, huh? And Cobra's like, well, yeah, I wish I would have had a little bit stronger of a name like Alice. So they make it to this hotel, and really at this point, Cobra is just, again, if he's not cleaning his weapons, he's going on and having to open up this secure briefcase that is to have this uh, foam and to have this gun inside of it, where he's like, all right, like, this is gonna be my big meaty gun for the third act. And so Ingrid is to go on and look at Cobra and his many of two weapons, and just like, hey, can you come over here and tell me a story? Can you just come over here by this bed and just comfort me? And Cobra's like, well, yeah, I guess I could do that. I don't think it'll be too dangerous. And so we have the two of them just kind of waking up the very next day. If Cobra hadn't found out that Nancy had been making a phone call and asking why Nancy hadn't gone on to make a phone call within the room that her and Gonzalez were sharing, it's like, well, that phone is out of order conveniently. But so, like, it would have been really interesting if Cobra would have gone into that one hotel room and just kind of double checked with Gonzalez, like, hey, is that phone out of order in that room? Because I don't trust Nancy as far as I can throw her. But so we wake up the next day to have everybody kind of getting up, getting ready for the day, going outside to realize that Nancy is to be with these gunmen. And we have this whole huge kind of chase scene going on here. If we are to already not already have that in this scene or in this movie, where uh, Stallone is to go on and get Ingrid, and is to have this one like car in front and behind Cobra as they are to like try and escape from the chase of this situation, and is to have these cars kind of be like tossed through all of these like hard roads and whatever to just kind of make this action scene more action packed. But then we have Cobra, who is to go on and use his gun against these foes, then realize that they have to kind of jump into this truck while Gonzalez had been kind of gunned down, but not to have been killed. And Cobra is asking for Gonzalez, but then realizes like he's probably dead. So he runs off into this truck. So Ingrid is driving this truck while Cobra is to be blasting away at all of these threats that are coming towards them. I think there's some certain characters upon these motorcycles, and they're kind of mixing it up here from the chase that was to have happened earlier in this film that I already just mentioned. But so this whole situation is to eventually lead them from that motel area to this mining facility. And so Cobra is to go on and lay waste to all of these men to really just give us this mining facility that is to be kind of very much more thinned out with just kind of Nancy and the Night Stalker character. But there is kind of some foot soldiers, but like Cobra ends up quite easily taking them out in the early parts of this whole kind of mining facility thing. So Ingrid goes on to make her way through this mining facility as Cobra is to kind of tell her to run or to tell her to get down from that place, because at some point Ingrid is to kind of make her way through this mining facility to mix it up with either Nancy or to mix it up with the Night Stalker, forcing Cobra to need to assist her or save her, and eventually pushing more and more to the fact that Cobra is to go on and face up against this Night Stalker character alone. Once we would, of course, have Cobra take out Nancy and kill her. So we go on and have the Night Stalker, or the Night Slasher, my bad. I'm going to just call him Slasher from now on. It'd be easier. So Slasher goes on to like be like a really great villain once he finally has lines in this film, where he calls Cobra, he's like, "Pig, you want to go to hell with me, pig? I'm the hunter. Like, we need to exist." like uh like it's like the whole kind of food chain kind of mentality that the slasher is really going into, like the real thought out like reasoning for this anarchy group existing is to like just kind of even out the world in some kind of way, but it's just really just realizing that the slasher is just a pure evil character. And so we have Cobra, who is to be at a pretty good pace between him and the slasher character, and Cobra is to go on and want to just gun down this man. But then we would have the slasher who is like no, like, you're not gonna kill me. Like, you're the good guy. Like, you have rules. Like, you're not gonna gun me down. And Stallone is just like, well, like, the law stops here with me. And, like, I can do whatever I want. And so we're thinking we're gonna have, like, just this kind of easy ending where Stallone just guns this man down. But instead, no, like, the gun gets out of Stallone's hands, and then we have this knife chain fight which of course leads Cobra to force our villainous character into this massive hook to latch him onto there, because we consistently see this hook going back and forth in this whole fight, or in this environment as it is altogether. And so Cobra latches this guy into this hook, and we see this guy making his way to this whole burning scenario. If we were to have already seen Cobra kind of drop gasoline upon this one other villain and take uh, his matchstick and light it and just toss it onto this guy, further realizing why this guy had this matchstick this whole entire time in his mouth. But so we would of course have Cobra, who is taking Grid to make their way out of this facility, and we would of course have the police force arrive far too late, and we have Gonzalez, who is kind of gurning away as he's asked for gummy bears, and we finally have like the perfect end to, of course, the most cliche-ish action movie ever, where finally we have Detective Mont, who is talking to Cobra. It's like, man, like you've really gone on to just lay waste to all these people and have pure anarchy and destruction go on within this area. I'm kind of very heavily paraphrasing here, but I do that all the time regardless. And we would, of course, finally have Detective Mon, who's like, well, yeah, I would have gone on and I would have done a lot better. And finally, Mont is to be like, well, hey, but you know what? Like, how about we put it there? And, like, we finally just bury the hatchet between the two of us to just be bygones, like bygones, and, like, realize that we are just two different people. And so the Cobra is just like, all right, like, yeah, like, let's put it there. Like, puts it there to just put it right there. Just like, bam! And so Cobra ends up talking to Ingrid, and Ingrid is just like, well, what are you going to do next? And Cobra's like, I don't know, like, move on to another case. There ever is to really be a sequel to this film. And more than likely, you probably won't be the next damsel in distress. Because I'm probably going to be placing a whole brand new story somewhere down the road. But yeah, we would, of course, have Cobra, who is going on and talking to Captain Sears. And Captain Sears is like, well, is there anything that I can do for you, Cobra? Cobra's like, well, like, I would love to just get my car replaced. Captain Sears is just like, well, sorry, but we don't have the budget for that kind of stuff. Like, man, I'm sure, like, there was like 5 to 10 different versions of that car that they had to be placed in this movie to use. And so, yeah, this movie doesn't have that kind of budget, Cobra. And so Cobra's like, well, okay, that's fine. Like, I can just make my way out of here off of this motorcycle that I probably had to kill a guy for. But so Cobra and Ingrid are making their way onto this motorcycle where Cobra's like, yeah, I have a ride. So they drive off into the sunset, and that's what is to, of course, wrap up this movie. And I'm going to go and try to wrap up out of here because I realize this is an hour and 20-minute movie. I probably should not be talking for an hour and 20 minutes, but I also probably shouldn't be talking for an hour anyway. Because I'm probably going to try and get more stuff eventually on this channel. So really, it's always kind of like, man, so many lost opportunities, but then also really also I'm having a lot of fun with the content that I am doing, and so that's a plus. It's finally a plus. They're good movies that I'm finding, and so I'm just so happy with that. So Also, let me know in the comments below, beyond probably something that I've probably already talked to somebody about already reviewing. Let me know kind of future stuff that I could probably go on and find as long as it's a good film. But then also realizing that I still need to get to a lot of projects as well. Realizing that I just kind of started stuff like Common Rider and other anime and shows and whatever, and I'm just kind of not doing any of those and just kind of plopping into these kind of one-off films. But anyways, I'm gonna go on and get out of here. Thank you everybody, and bye everybody. Bye everybody.